There is a time of day that belongs to the elders, not the morning. The morning belongs to the young, to the energy of work beginning in the day opening up ahead, to the specific optimism of a world that has not yet shown what it intends to do with the hours it has been given. Not the afternoon. The afternoon belongs to the work itself, to the sustained effort of people in the middle of their days, their hands and their minds occupied with the specific demands of whatever the day requires of them. The time that belongs to the elders is the evening, the hour when the light begins to change, when the harsh white intensity of the African afternoon softens into something warmer, something more golden, something that makes the world look the way it looks in memory rather than the way it looks in the full exposure of midday. This is the elders' hour, the time when the day's work is complete and the specific quality of attention that experience produces can be given fully to the people gathered around the fire. In communities across the African continent, from the Sahel to the savannah, from the forest to the coast, from the highland plateaus to the river valleys, this evening gathering has been happening for as long as people have been people, as long as the young have needed what the old have accumulated, as long as the fire has been the gathering place and the story has been the medium through which one generation passes to the next, the specific distillation of everything it has learned. The elders sit, not in the way that tired people sit, not with a collapse of bodies that have given everything and have nothing left, but in the specific way of people who have learned that stillness is not the absence of power but its most concentrated form, that the elder who sits quietly at the center of the gathering is not less present than the young people moving energetically at its edges, but more present, more fully there, more completely available to the moment and to the people in it. They sit, and when the right moment comes, when the fire has settled into its steady burn and the children have found their places and the adults have completed the transition from the day's work to the evening's rest, the elder speaks, not with the urgency of someone who has things to say and limited time to say them, with the patience of someone who has learned that the most important things cannot be rushed, that wisdom offered too quickly is wisdom that cannot be received, that the right pace of the transmission of what matters most is the pace of the evening itself, slow, warm, unhurried, generous with time in a way that only the very wise and the very old are generous with it. Tonight, that elder is here. Not one elder, many, drawn from the full breadth of the African continent, from traditions that have been developing their understanding of the world and the human place in it for thousands of years, from communities whose specific accumulated wisdom takes different forms in different languages in different cultural contexts, but that shares, at its deepest level, a common orientation toward the things that matter most. They are here tonight in the specific way that stories make people present across the distances of geography and time, their voices in the narration, their wisdom in the Proverbs, their specific way of seeing the world available to anyone who settles in and listens with a quality of attention that this hour deserves. So settle in now. Let your body find its comfortable weight in wherever you are resting tonight. Let the day's business release its hold on your attention, not all at once, not by effort, but gradually, the way the light releases its hold on the sky in the evening, slowly and completely and without any force. The elders are gathered, the fire is burning, and the wisdom is beginning. Segment 1, the first teachings on community and belonging. From across the continent, the elders begin with the thing they consider most fundamental. Not the individual, not the self, not the personal journey of a single life, but the community, the web of relationship within which every individual life finds its meaning and its sustenance. A Zulu elder Sitting at the edge of the firelight in the KwaZulu-Natal highlands begins with a saying so old that no one can trace its origin, a saying that has been spoken at gatherings like this one for longer than anyone alive can remember. Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. A person is a person through other people. He does not explain it immediately. The elder's way is not to define, but to let the words settle first, to give the listener time to feel the weight of them before the meaning is unpacked. And the weight is considerable, because what the saying is doing, what it has always been doing in every gathering where it has been spoken, is making a specific claim about the nature of human identity that runs directly against the assumption most of us carry without knowing we carry it. The assumption that the self is primary, that who we are exists first in isolation and then in relationship, that the individual is a basic unit of human reality and the community is something that individuals create by coming together. The Zulu elder is saying something different. He is saying that the individual does not precede the community, that the self does not exist first and then enter into relationship, but that the self is constituted by relationship, called into being by the specific web of human connection within which it develops and finds its shape. You are not a person who happens to be in community. You are a person because of community, because of the specific people who named you and fed you and taught you and corrected you and celebrated you and mourned with you and worked alongside you, the specific human relationships that called your personhood into existence and that continue to sustain it. Remove the community and you do not find the authentic individual underneath. You find something diminished, something that has lost the very thing that made it what it was. This is not a comfortable teaching for a world that has organized so much of its life around the primacy of the individual, around the belief that the highest human achievement is independence, the freedom from the claims that other people make on us. The elder is not hostile to independence. He has lived long enough to know that the capacity to stand alone when standing alone is necessary is a genuine human achievement, worth cultivating, worth honoring. But he is insisting on something that the celebration of independence tends to obscure, that the person capable of standing alone when necessary develop that capacity within a community, that the strength required for independence was built through the specific dependencies of childhood and apprenticeship and the long years of learning from people who knew more, and that the person who forgets this, who mistakes the independence they have achieved for a condition that was always theirs, has lost something essential about their own story. The fire crackles. The elder is quiet for a moment, letting the saying do its work in the minds of the people gathered around him. Then he offers the illustration of the saying called for, the specific story that makes the abstract principle concrete, that takes a philosophical claim and roots it in the specific, lived experience of real people in real circumstances. There was a man. He begins in the way that African elders begin stories, not with a date, not with a location, not with the specific identifying details that Western narrative tend to open with, but with a simple announcement of a human presence that the story will explore. There was a man who believed that he had built everything he had by himself. He had worked hard, genuinely, relentlessly hard, in the way of people who are determined to prove something, whose drive comes from the specific combination of ambition and a need to demonstrate that the need for others can be overcome. He had accumulated what his community considered wealth: cattle, land, a well-built homestead, the visible markers of a successful life. And he told himself in the private conversation that each person has with themselves in the quiet of their own mind, that he had done it alone, that the success was his. that the achievement was individual, that what he had built was proof that a person could, if they were determined enough, make themselves. The elder pauses. He looks into the fire. And then he asks a question that the man in the story could not answer when it was asked to him. Who taught you to speak? Not in the abstract sense, not as a philosophical challenge, but specifically, literally. Who taught you the specific words you used to negotiate the purchase of your first cattle? Who taught you the specific language through which you expressed the quality of your character to the people who trusted you with credit before you had established yourself? Who taught you the specific way of greeting the elder whose goodwill was essential for the land negotiation that gave you the foundation on which everything else was built? The man could not answer, because the answer, the honest, complete answer, was everyone. Every person who had ever spoken to him. Every elder whose conversation he had absorbed without realizing he was absorbing it. Every peer whose way of handling a difficulty he had watched and stored in the specific memory that we do not know we are using when we act with a competence that we mistake for our own. The man had not built what he had built alone. He had built it with everything that everyone he had ever known had given him in ways that were often invisible, often unacknowledged, often mistaken by the recipient for his own native capability rather than the accumulated gift of the community that had formed him. Umuntu Ngumuntu Ngabantu. A person is a person through other people. The elder does not moralize, does not tell the man in the story what he should feel or what he should do differently. He simply names what is true and lets the truth do its work. From the highlands of KwaZulu-Natal, the fire moves, the way the imagination moves in the evening, easily and without effort, covering distances that the body could not cover in weeks, to the savannah of West Africa, to the Akan tradition of what is now Ghana, where another elder sits in another gathering with another saying that has been shaped by generations of use into the specific, compressed wisdom of a proverb. Onipa eneo hia onipa. A person needs a person. 5 words that contain, if you are willing to sit with them long enough, an entire philosophy of human interdependency, a philosophy that is not sentimental and not idealistic, but simply accurate, simply the honest description of the human situation as generations of careful observation have revealed it to be. The fire is steady now, and your body has found its first real comfort of the evening. The specific settling that happens when the transition from the day to the night has been completed, when the body has given up its held tensions and the mind has released its grip on the day's unfinished business. The elders are still speaking. There are many more of them, from many more traditions, with many more of the specific distillations of human experience that the proverb form carries. The Igbo elder of southeastern Nigeria has something to say about the relationship between the individual journey and the collective destination. The Swahili elder of the East African coast has something to say about the specific obligations of hospitality and what they reveal about the character of a community. The Shona elder of Zimbabwe has something to say about the relationship between the living and the ancestors and the specific form of community that extends across the boundary of death. All of them are here in the patient way of people who have learned that the most important things are worth waiting for, worth approaching slowly, worth receiving in the specific quality of attention that this hour and this gathering deserve. Let your breathing slow a little more. Let the fire's warmth find you where you are resting. The wisdom continues, unhurried and complete, carrying you through the evening and into the deep quiet that is waiting at the end of it. Segment 2, the second teachings, on patience and the nature of time. The fire has settled into its steady rhythm, and the elders shift, almost imperceptibly, from the teachings on community into something quieter, something that requires a different quality of listening, a different quality of stillness. They begin to speak about time, about the specific relationship between human urgency and the deeper patience of the world. There is an elder in Mali who has been sitting in silence for a while now, not the silence of someone who has nothing to say, but the specific, weighted silence of someone who is choosing the right moment with the same care that a craftsperson chooses the right tool, understanding that the moment of speaking matters as much as what is spoken, that wisdom offered at the wrong moment is wisdom that cannot land. He watches the fire. He watches the faces of the people around it. The young ones whose eyes are still bright with the energy of the day, the middle-aged ones whose faces carry the specific tiredness of people and the full weight of their responsibilities, the older ones whose stillness mirrors his own. And then, when the moment is right in the way that only he can feel it being right, he speaks. Werity Fagadon. The river does not kill in a single day. He lets it sit. The young man across the fire, the one whose impatience has been visible all evening in the specific way that young men's impatience is always visible, in the restlessness of the body and the quickness of the eyes, looks up. He has been waiting for wisdom that addresses his situation directly, the specific difficulty he is in the middle of, the problem that feels urgent in the way that all problems feel urgent when you are young and when the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems impossibly wide. He is not sure this is what he was waiting for. The river does not kill in a single day. What does a river have to do with his situation? The elder sees a question forming on the young man's face, has seen it form on many faces over many years. The specific look of someone who has received something they do not yet know how to hold. And he begins to explain. Not quickly. The explanation itself is part of the teaching, the pace of it demonstrating the very quality it is describing. The river, he says, is one of the most patient forces in the natural world. It does not attack the stone in its path with the sudden violence of a hammer blow, does not try to overcome the obstacle through a single concentrated application of force. It simply keeps moving, day after day, year after year, century after century, the water flowing against the stone with a specific, gentle, absolutely consistent pressure, something that knows it is time, that has no urgency about the outcome, that is not frustrated by the resistance of the stone because it has never expected the stone to yield quickly. And the stone yields, not because the water was stronger in any single moment. The water is not stronger than the stone, cannot overcome it, cannot move it, but because the water was consistent, because a specific combination of patience and persistence, the willingness to keep applying gentle, consistent pressure across a time frame that the stone's resistance cannot outlast, is ultimately more powerful than any amount of sudden force. The river does not kill in a single day, but it kills. The young man is beginning to understand. The elder can see it in the specific way his restlessness is quieted, in the quality of attention that has replaced the impatience in his eyes. His problem is the stone, not an obstacle to be overcome with a single concentrated effort, not a difficulty that will yield to urgency or to the specific kind of pressure that impatience generates. A stone that requires a river's approach, consistent, patient, unhurried, trusting that the outcome is possible even when no single day's effort produces visible results. The elder does not tell him what his specific problem is or how to apply the river's teaching to it. That is not the elder's role. and it would not be the elder's wisdom to specify what only the young man can know. He is given the map. The young man must find his own territory within it. From Mali, the fire moves east to the highlands of Ethiopia, where another tradition has been developing its understanding of time and patience for millennia, where the specific ecological reality of a landscape that is alternately generous and harsh has produced a specific wisdom about the relationship between human effort and natural timing. The Ethiopian elder does not begin with a proverb. He begins with an observation. He has been watching the sky for most of his life. He says, not in the way of an astronomer or a scientist, not with the instruments of formal knowledge, but in the way of a farmer and a pastoralist, in the way of someone whose specific livelihood depends on reading the sky correctly and whose specific survival has depended, across many seasons and many difficult years, on the ability to distinguish between what can be hurried and what cannot. Nothing in the sky can be hurried, he says. Not the rains. They come when they come, in the specific season and the specific quantity that the larger patterns of weather determine, indifferent to the farmer's need for them to come earlier or to last longer or to fall more gently on the specific fields where they are most needed. Not the sun. It rises when it rises and sets when it sets, in the specific arc that the season determines, giving more light in some months and less in others in the pattern that has governed every day since before any human being was alive to observe it. Not the stars. They move in their slow, ancient circles, indifferent to any urgency, completing their cycles in the time frames of the cosmos rather than the time frames of human need. And the person who has been watching the sky for most of their life, who has learned to read it, to anticipate it, to work with its specific patterns rather than against them, this person has learned something about time that the person who has not watched the sky cannot easily understand. Time does not belong to us. We move through time. We experience it. We are shaped by it. We are limited by it. But we do not own it, cannot control it, cannot make it move faster or slower than it moves. The Ethiopian proverb that the elder offers from this observation is not a famous one, not one of the widely circulated African proverbs that appear in collections and on posters. It is a local saying, specific to his community, shaped by the specific experience of his people in their specific highland landscape. The children of patience do not go hungry. He explains it simply. The farmer who plants at the right time, nor at the time dictated by urgency, nor at the time that impatience would prefer, but at a specific time that the soil and the season and the accumulated wisdom of generations of farmers in this specific landscape indicate is right. This farmer harvests. The farmer who plants too early, driven by the urgency of wanting the harvest to come sooner. This farmer plants into soil that is not ready, that has not received the rains that will activate it, that will not support the germination and the growth that the harvest requires. The patience to wait for the right moment is not passivity. It is a specific intelligence of someone who understands that their effort is only one part of the equation, that the world has its own timing, and that the most effective human action is the action that works with that timing rather than against it. The children of patience do not go hungry, not because patience magically produces food, but because the patient person plants at the right time, tends at the right time, harvests at the right time, stores correctly and uses wisely, operating in the specific alignment with the natural world's own timing that produces the outcomes that impatience cannot reach. The Swahili coast has its own teaching on time. shaped by the specific reality of a maritime culture whose relationship with time is organized around the wind, the tide, the specific seasonal patterns of the Indian Ocean monsoon that have governed the movement of ships and people and goods along the East African coast for millennia. The Swahili elder who speaks next has spent her life near the ocean, not beside it in the passive sense, but in genuine relationship with it, the relationship of a community that has learned to read the ocean the way the Ethiopian elder has learned to read the sky, with a specific intimate knowledge that comes from dependency and from the long-accumulated experience of generations. She offers a saying that the sailors and the fishermen of the Swahili coast have been using for as long as a community can remember, a saying that is so embedded in the daily life of the coast that people often do not recognize it as wisdom, mistake it for simply a practical observation about maritime conditions. Fiery Shaba. The ocean has no shortcuts. The sailor who tries to take a shortcut across the ocean, who cuts across the specific routes that experience has established as safe and reliable in favor of a more direct line that looks short on the surface. This sailor is not clever. This sailor is in danger, because the ocean's routes are not arbitrary. They are the specific paths of the wind patterns and the current systems, and the specific hazards of underwater geography make safe. And the shortcut that looks more direct ignores the specific realities that the established route was designed to navigate around. But the saying carries more than maritime wisdom. The Swahili elder uses it the way African elders use their most powerful proverbs, as a template, a shape that can be laid over any situation to reveal the specific ways in which that situation has an ocean's logic, a logic that shortcuts cannot safely circumvent. The relationship that is rushed to its destination, the friendship pushed to intimacy before trust has been established, the love declared before the specific knowledge of a person that genuine love requires has been accumulated. This relationship has taken a shortcut across the ocean. The learning that is hurried to a conclusion. The skill practiced until the learner feels ready rather than until the skill itself has been genuinely mastered. The knowledge received in summary rather than in the full depth of understanding that genuine competence requires. This learning has taken a shortcut. The healing that is declared complete before the specific time that healing requires has passed. The grief resolved on schedule rather than in its own time. The wound closed before the infection has been properly addressed. This healing has taken a shortcut. Fiery Shaba. The ocean has no shortcuts. And neither does any of the genuinely important work of a human life. The work of building relationships, developing capability, healing damage, growing into the specific person that the life requires. These things take the time they take. And the person who has learned this, who has made peace with the ocean's logic, who has stopped fighting against the specific timing of the things that cannot be hurried, this person has learned one of the most practically useful pieces of wisdom that the elders have to offer. Not because patience is comfortable. It is not, and the elders do not pretend that it is. But because the alternative is the shipwreck of the sailor who tried to cross the ocean by a route the ocean does not support. There is a Yoruba saying that brings together everything the elders have been offering about time and patience in a single image so vivid and so specific that it needs almost no explanation. Agba to Ban Rin Lo Omo, Konin Rinmo. The elder who walks at the child's pace will never walk again. This sounds, at first, like a criticism of patience, like a warning against the specific slowness of accommodating those who are slower, a counsel to maintain the elder's own pace regardless of those who cannot keep up. But the Yoruba elder who offers this saying is not making that argument. He is making a subtler one that requires sitting with the image long enough to see what it is actually saying. The elder who walks at the child's pace has confused two different things. The patience of the river, the consistent, purposeful, directed patience of something that knows where it is going and keeps moving toward it, and the patience of waiting, the passive, directionless patience of something that has stopped moving in deference to the pace of someone else. The river is patient, but the river does not stop. The river keeps moving at its own pace, in its own direction, with its own consistency, and the patience it exhibits is not the patience of accommodation, but the patience of sustained, unhurried, purposeful movement. The elder who walks at the child's pace has stopped being the river, has become instead something that is waiting, and the thing that is waiting is not moving, is not progressing, is not covering the ground that needs to be covered. And the ground that needs to be covered is the specific ground of a human life, the specific growth and the specific wisdom and the specific becoming that each person's life requires them to accomplish, that cannot be done while standing still in deference to someone else's pace. The elder must walk at the elder's pace, not impatiently, not with the urgency that leaves a child behind and does not look back, but at the pace that is right for where the elder is in their own journey, at the pace that the elder's own specific growth and wisdom and becoming require. This is the balance that the wisdom of time and patience finally arrives at, not the passive waiting of someone who has confused patience with inaction, and not the urgency of someone who has confused progress with speed, but the specific, directed, purposeful movement of someone who knows where they are going, who is moving consistently toward it, who is patient with the obstacles and the setbacks and the specific difficulties of the journey without ever mistaking patience for stopping. The river's patience, moving always, yielding the stone in time. The night has deepened around you while the elders have been speaking. The fire lower now, the light warmer and more intimate, the darkness beyond its circle more complete. Your body has found the specific comfort of a body that has been in one position long enough to fully release into it. The muscles no longer holding against the surface beneath them but surrendering to it. The weight of the body accepted completely by whatever is supporting it. The teachings on patience are settling into you in the specific way that the best teachings settle, not as information to be stored and retrieved, but as something more bodily than that, something that changes not just what you know but how you sit with the world. There are more elders to hear from, the ones who speak about failure and its specific relationship to wisdom, the ones who speak about the relationship between the individual life and the generations that preceded it, the ones who speak about anger and grief and the specific work of moving through difficult emotions without being destroyed by them. All of them patient, all of them here, carrying the specific weight of what they have learned across the years and the difficulties and the accumulated experience of lives fully lived, offering it in the specific compressed form of the proverb to the people gathered around the fire tonight. To you, rest here for a moment in the warmth of what has already been offered. Let the river's patience be in you. Let the ocean's logic settle into your understanding of what cannot be rushed. And let the next teaching find you when you are ready for it. The undefeated man is not a hero. He is someone who has organized his life with such care around the avoidance of failure that he has never attempted anything that might fail, has never taken the risk that genuine ambition requires, has never extended himself to the edge of his capability where falling is possible, has lived within the comfortable boundaries of what he knows he can do, and has consequently never discovered what else he might have been capable of. He has never fallen. and he has never grown, not in the specific, substantive way that growth requires. The growth that comes from having been wrong and learning what being wrong reveals, from having been inadequate in developing the specific capability that the inadequacy made necessary, from having fallen in a specific direction and understanding from the specific direction of the fall something about yourself and the world that upright success could never have shown you. The undefeated man reaches the end of his life with everything intact, his reputation unmarked by visible failure, his self-image unchallenged by the specific confrontations with his own limitations that failure produces, and with a specific, irreplaceable poverty. The poverty of someone who has never been tested deeply enough to find out what they are actually made of, who has never been broken open in the specific way that failure breaks people open and discovers what is inside, who has never had the specific experience of falling and getting up, the experience that builds a particular quality of resilience that cannot be built any other way, that is a product specifically of having fallen and chosen continue rather than to stop. You fill with Takula. The one who has never been defeated has never grown. From Zambia, the fire moves north to the Great Lakes region of East Africa, to the traditions of the Baganda people of what is now Uganda, where another elder is waiting with a teaching that extends what the Bemba elder has offered into a specific and practically useful direction. The Baganda elder is a man whose specific quality of presence is different from the Bemba elders, where she has a depth of someone who has survived difficulty. He has a specific warmth of someone who has made peace with difficulty, who has arrived at a relationship with the hardships of his life that is not simply acceptance, but something more active than acceptance, something closer to gratitude. He opens with a saying that the younger people in the gathering have heard before, have heard it from their parents, have perhaps dismissed it in the way that young people sometimes dismiss the wisdom of their elders as too abstract to be practically useful, but that in the elder's specific telling tonight, in the specific context of everything that the Bemba elder has just offered, lands differently. Oyagendo LW Amaga Tekusembra. The journey of the river is never wasted. He points to the fire, to the specific wood that is burning in it, the wood that was once a tree that grew in a specific place and drew its specific sustenance from a specific soil, and that is now providing warmth and light to the people gathered around it. The tree did not know, he says, that it was growing toward this moment, did not know, in the specific terms of trees knowing anything, that the specific growth of its roots downward and its branches upward and its rings outward was preparation for specific future use that it could not have anticipated. The tree grew in the direction that its specific nature and its specific environment required, and in growing, it became what was needed. The river, similarly, does not know where it is going, does not have a map of its own route from source to sea, does not understand in any planning sense of the specific turns and the specific poolings and the specific accelerations of its journey are taking it somewhere specific. It simply moves in the direction that the landscape allows, downhill, through the specific contours of the terrain it is crossing, finding its way by the simple physics of water seeking its own level. And in finding its way, it covers ground, feeds the land on either side, carries the silt that will enrich the delta, does the specific work that rivers do without knowing it is doing work. Oyagendo LW Amaga Tekusembra. The journey of the river is never wasted. The Baganda elder is speaking to something that the experience of failure tend to produce in people, a specific doubt about the value of the journey itself, a retrospective questioning of whether the effort was worth it, whether the path that led to failure was a wrong path, whether the time spent on it was time wasted. He is saying that no genuine journey is wasted, not because every journey reaches the intended destination. Some do not, and pretending otherwise is not wisdom but false comfort, but because every genuine journey, every honest, fully committed attempt to reach somewhere, to do something, to become something, covers ground, does work on the traveler that staying still would not have done, reveals things about the landscape and about the self that only movement reveals, and deposits something in the traveler, in the people the traveler touched along the way, in the specific places where the journey paused and then continued, that is not wasted even when the destination was not reached. The river that never reaches the sea is still a river, still waters the land on either side, still does a specific, irreplaceable work of a river. The journey that did not reach its destination is still a journey, still grew the traveler, still did the work that journeys do. The teaching on failure would not be complete without the specific teaching on shame, the specific emotion that failure tends to produce, the feeling that is often more difficult to survive than the practical consequences of the failure itself. The elder who speaks to this comes from the Wolof tradition of Senegal and the Gambia, a tradition with one of the richest and most extensively developed Proverbs traditions in all of West Africa, a community whose accumulated wisdom about human psychology and human social dynamics has been refined across centuries of careful observation. The Wolof elder is a griot, not the griot in the full institutional sense that we explored in an earlier episode of this channel, but a griot in the more general sense, a person whose role in the community is the preservation and transmission of knowledge through the specific medium of language. He has spent his life with words, has learned, through that specific lifelong intimacy with language, the specific power that words have to damage and to heal, to diminish and to restore, to trap a person in a single defining moment of their story or to release them back into the full complexity of a life that is larger than any single failure. The proverb he offers is about shame. Kuzam, duzam bi umeti. The one who truly knows what it means to not know. This is a proverb about the relationship between knowledge and humility, but it arrives at that relationship through the specific door, the experience of not knowing, of being wrong, of the exposure that failure creates. The person who has never experienced a specific exposure of being publicly wrong, who has managed their life carefully enough to avoid the humiliation of visible failure. This person does not truly know what it feels like to not know, does not know the specific experience of realizing that what they were certain was wrong, that the confidence it projected was built on a foundation that turned out to be inadequate, that the image of competence they had constructed and maintained was challenged by the specific, undeniable reality of a failure that everyone could see. And without that knowledge, without the specific, humbling, perspective-altering experience of exposure, this person cannot truly know what it means to know, cannot appreciate the specific value of genuine knowledge, the knowledge that has been tested, that has been challenged, that has survived the confrontation with its own inadequacy and emerged not destroyed but refined, cannot know the specific quality of appropriate confidence, the confidence of someone who knows that they know because they have also known what it is to not know, who does not confuse certainty with truth because they have experienced the gap between the two. The elder is not glorifying shame. He has seen what shame can do to people when it is carried too long or too heavily, the specific damage of a person who has allowed a single failure to define the entirety of their self-understanding. He is making a more specific and more useful point, that the experience of exposure, of being seen to be wrong or inadequate, of having the gap between self-image and reality made publicly visible, is one of the most valuable experiences available to a human being. Not comfortable, not desirable in itself, but valuable, specifically, practically, irreplaceably valuable, in what it teaches about the nature of knowledge and the nature of the self and the specific humility that genuine wisdom requires. There's a Kikuyu proverb from the highlands of Kenya that brings together everything the elders have been offering about failure and learning, and the long road of wisdom in an image so simple and so precise that it needs almost no elaboration. Mwana wa nyoka and I nyoka. The child of a snake is a snake. This sounds, at first encounter, like a proverb about inheritance, about the way that character is transmitted from parent to child, about the specific continuity between generations that family resemblance produces. And it is partly that, but the Kikuyu elder who offers this saying in tonight's gathering is using it in a more specific way, applying it not to the relationship between parents and children, but to the relationship between experience and wisdom. The child of difficulty is difficult, not in the sense of being damaged by it, though difficulty can damage, and the elder knows this, but in the sense of being shaped by it, of carrying in itself a specific character, the thing that produced it, the way that a child carries in their face and their bearing and their specific way of moving through the world the evidence of the family that made them. Wisdom is the child of difficulty, not of comfort. Comfort produces many good things, but wisdom is not among them, not of ease. Ease is pleasant and worth cultivating, but ease does not generate the specific understanding that the hard passages of a life produce. Wisdom is what grows from difficulty in a person who has not been destroyed by the difficulty, who has gone through it with sufficient resilience and sufficient attention to be changed by it in the specific direction that change in the right direction produces. Mwana wa nyoka and I nyoka. The child of a snake is a snake. The child of difficulty is wisdom, and the person who has understood this, who has stopped relating to the difficult passages of their life as simply losses, as simply the painful evidence of an unkind world, and has begun to look for the specific wisdom that each difficulty has produced or is in the process of producing. This person has learned the most practical piece of advice that any elder can offer about the long road of learning. Not to avoid difficulty, not to seek it out unnecessarily. The elder is too old and too experienced to counsel the pursuit of suffering for its own sake, but to receive it, when it comes, with a specific quality of attention that extracts from it what it contains. The understanding that is only available inside the difficulty, the resilience that is only built by going through the thing that tests it, the wisdom that is only the child of the experience that produced it. The fire is lower now, not dying, but settling into the specific quality of heat and light that a fire reaches when it has been burning long enough to move past the initial drama of it beginning into something more sustained, more reliable, more genuinely warm. Your body has reached a similar settling, the specific comfort of a body that has been in the presence of something genuinely nourishing for long enough that the nourishment has moved past the surface and into the deeper layers, into the part of a person that the surface does not always reach. The elders have been speaking about hard things tonight, about failure and shame and the long, uncomfortable road of genuine learning, and they have spoken about them with a specific quality of care that only people who have been through those things and come out the other side can bring. not the care of someone who has avoided difficulty and is offering advice from the safety of distance. The care of people who know, who have fallen and gotten up, who have been exposed and survived the exposure, who have traveled the long road of learning long enough to have arrived at something that looks and feels like wisdom, not the perfect, finished wisdom of someone who has figured everything out, but the specific, earned, genuinely useful wisdom of someone who has paid for what they know with a specific currency that wisdom always costs. The time and the difficulty and the willingness to keep going when stopping would have been easier. There is more ahead. The elders have not finished. There are teachings on anger and its proper management, on grief and the specific work it requires, on the relationship between the individual life and the generations that preceded it, on the specific obligations of the person who has received wisdom toward the people who have not yet received it. All of it waiting, patient as a fire, warm as a gathering, present in the specific way that tonight has been present from its beginning. Rest here for a moment in what has already been offered. Let the snake's child settle into you, the specific, earned wisdom of the difficult passages, transformed by the attention you have given them into something that will serve you. And let the next teaching find you ready. Segment 4, the fourth teachings, on anger, grief, and the work of difficult emotions. The fire has reached its most intimate hour, the hour when the light is warmest and most contained, when the darkness beyond the circle has become complete and the people inside the circle have drawn imperceptibly closer to each other and to the heat. The elders sense the shift. They have been speaking about the external world, about community and time and failure and learning. Now they turn inward, toward the internal landscape, toward the emotions that every human life contains and that every human life must find a way to carry without being destroyed by them. The Hausa elder from northern Nigeria and Niger has been sitting with particular stillness through the previous teachings. Not the stillness of someone who is not present, but the specific, concentrated stillness of someone whose attention is fully engaged, who has been listening with a whole of themselves rather than simply with the surface of their awareness. He is a man who has seen a great deal of anger in his long life. Not only his own, though he has seen that too, with the specific honesty of someone who has made peace with a part of himself that are not always admirable. But the anger of communities, the specific, collective anger that gathers in the people who have been wronged, who have been deprived of something they were owed, who have been treated in ways that any reasonable understanding of justice would condemn. He has seen what that anger does when it is not managed, when it is allowed to grow unchecked into the specific destructive force that unmanaged anger always eventually becomes, consuming the people it inhabits as readily as it consumes the people it is directed at. And he has seen what the management of anger looks like, the specific, difficult, deeply human work of people who feel the anger fully and honestly and do not pretend it away, but who find a way to carry it that does not allow it to become the defining principle of their lives. He begins with a proverb, "How she by a bossy." Anger does not sleep. He lets it sit in the gathering for a moment before explaining it, long enough for the people around the fire to feel the specific truth of it in their own experience, to recall the specific nights when anger has kept them awake, when the rehearsal of a grievance or a wound has moved through the mind long after the body wanted rest. Anger does not sleep. This is not simply an observation about insomnia, though it is that too, and anyone who has tried to sleep while carrying genuine anger knows the specific, exhausting accuracy of it. It is an observation about the nature of anger as a force, about the specific way that anger, unlike most emotions, does not diminish naturally through the passage of time if it is not actively worked with. Sadness tends to ebb. Fear tends to fade when the feared thing has passed. Joy completes itself and releases. But anger, genuine, rooted, justified anger, the anger of someone who has been wronged in ways that the wrong has not addressed, this anger does not ebb on its own. It waits. It stays awake while the person who carries it tries to sleep. It is present in the morning, ready to resume where it left off the night before. It does not sleep, and the person who carries anger without working with it, without finding the specific way of relating to the anger that allows it to move and change and eventually transform into something that can be carried without consuming the carrier, this person will not sleep either. Not for as long as the anger persists. Not fully. Not with a specific, complete rest of someone who has put everything down for the night. The House of Elder is not counseling the suppression of anger. He has seen what suppressed anger does, the specific underground damage of an emotion that is not allowed its honest expression, that turns inward and becomes something more destructive in the outward anger it replaced. He is counseling something more difficult than suppression and more difficult than expression, the specific work of processing, of finding the relationship with the anger that neither denies it nor is consumed by it, that allows a person to feel it fully and to understand what it is telling them and to respond to what it is telling them with something other than the destruction that unmanaged anger tends to produce. This work, he says, is a work of the warrior, not the warrior who fights. That kind of warrior, he has observed, is often the person who has not done the internal work but has found an external outlet for the anger that substitutes for the internal processing rather than completing it. The warrior who sits with the anger, who looks at it honestly, who sees what it is made of, what specific wound or injustice or deprivation produced it, what it is asking for, what genuine response to the thing that generated it would look like, and who finds, through this honest looking, the specific path through the anger that leads to something other than either suppression or explosion. The path that the elder has walked himself, slowly, over many years, through more occasions of genuine anger than he can count, and that he can confirm leads somewhere, not to the absence of anger, but to a different relationship with it. The relationship of someone who is not afraid of their own anger, who does not need to suppress it or to act it out in order to manage the fear of it, but who has learned to carry it as information rather than as command, as a signal about what matters rather than as an instruction about what to do. The teaching on anger is incomplete without the teaching on the anger that is directed at oneself, the specific, internal anger of self-blame that follows failure or wrongdoing, or the specific moments when a person has acted against their own values and must find a way to live with that knowledge. The Xhosa elder from the Eastern Cape of South Africa speaks to this, a woman whose specific wisdom has been shaped by the specific experience of community that has survived things that should not have been survived, that has found ways to carry collective wounds that the easy formulas of forgiveness do not adequately address. She begins with a saying that she heard from her own grandmother, who heard it from Hayes. Inyanizo ayilabi umkinto. The truth does not wound with a spear. She unpacks it carefully, because this is a teaching that is easily misunderstood, that can seem at first encounter to be counseling a kind of complacency about wrongdoing, a too easy acceptance of what has been done. The truth does not wound with a spear. What it wounds with, she says, is something different from a spear. A spear wound is clean. It enters and exits. It bleeds. It heals or it does not heal, but its character is specific and its location is known. The wound that truth makes is different in character. It is not a wound to the body but to the self-image, to the specific story that a person tells about who they are and what they are capable of, to the comfortable narrative of their own goodness that most people maintain because maintaining it is necessary for functioning in the world with any degree of confidence. When the truth confronts this narrative, when the honest accounting of what was done and what was not done and what was said and what was left unsaid makes visible the specific gap between who the person believed themselves to be and who they actually were in that specific moment, this confrontation hurts. But it does not wound with a spear. It wounds with clarity. And clarity, unlike a spear wound, does not leave damage that cannot be worked with. It leaves understanding, the specific understanding of what happened and why, that is the only possible foundation for genuine change. The Corsa elder is not easy on wrongdoing. She has lived in a community whose history makes easy forgiveness feel like a betrayal of those who suffered, and she does not pretend to that easiness. But she is insisting that the truth, honestly faced, honestly received, honestly held without the specific defenses that shame tends to generate around the places we most need to look clearly, is not the enemy of the person who has done wrong. It is the only path available to them. The path that leads through the wound of honest self-knowledge to the specific possibility of genuine change, not the performed change of someone who is managing their reputation, but the internal change of someone who has seen themselves clearly and has chosen to become something different from what they saw. The truth does not wound with a spear. It wounds with the specific, survivable, ultimately healing pain of clarity. And the person who can receive that wound, who can sit with the honest accounting of what they have been and what they have done without the defenses that make honest accounting impossible, this person has access to something that the person who cannot receive it does not have. The possibility of genuine change. From anger and self-directed anger, the elders move to grief. The emotion that is in some ways the most difficult of all, the one that the culture of productivity and forward movement tends to handle least well, the one that the elders of the African traditions are perhaps the most specific and most practically useful wisdom about. The Luo elder from the shores of Lake Victoria in Kenya and Tanzania begins with an observation that seems simple until you sit with it long enough to feel its depth. He has been to many funerals, he says, not as a way of beginning a story, simply as a fact, the specific fact of an elder's life, the accumulated presence of the threshold of death that comes to anyone who lives long enough in a community that takes its collective mourning seriously. He has been to many funerals, and at every funeral, he has observed the same thing, the same specific, human, heartbreaking thing that the Luo tradition has been observing and speaking about for as long as the tradition has existed. The living want the dead to come back, not as a theological claim, not as a statement about the afterlife or about the possibility of return, but as a description of the specific emotional reality of grief, the specific refusal that loss produces in the people who love the one who is gone. This cannot be right, the grief says. This cannot be the final word. There must be a way to undo this, to reverse it, to find the specific path back to the world as it was before the loss, before the specific hole in the fabric of the daily life of the person's absence is created. The Luo proverb that the elder offers is one of the most ancient in the tradition. Lemo mao ke winjo, otimo gi lok. The prayer that is not heard has been made with a closed heart. He does not apply this immediately to grief. He lets it sit in its general form first, as an observation about the relationship between prayer and the quality of the heart that offers it. And then he makes a specific application. The prayer for the return of the dead is a prayer made with a closed heart, not because the prayer is wrong to make. The elder is not criticizing the grief that generates it, is not counseling against the honest expression of the longing that loss produces, but because the prayer is made in a direction that the universe cannot answer, toward the reversal of something that cannot be reversed, toward the restoration of something that the nature of existence does not permit to be restored. And the heart that is closed around this unanswerable prayer, that is focused so completely on the specific impossibility of a return that it cannot open to what is possible, this heart is not able to receive what grief, properly moved through, is capable of giving. What can grief give? The Luo elder is specific. It gives a specific, irreplaceable knowledge of what mattered. Because grief is proportional, it is as large as the love that preceded it, as specific as a specific relationship that the loss has ended, as particular as a particular person who is gone and the particular ways in which their presence shaped the life of the one who loved them. Grief, honestly received, tells you exactly what you valued, tells you, in the most specific and most undeniable terms possible, what the specific person meant to you, what specific dimensions of your life were made possible by their presence, what specific things they gave you that you did not fully register as gifts until their absence made the gifting visible. This knowledge is not available from anywhere else. It is a specific gift of grief, available only to the person who can open their heart to the grief rather than closing it around the unanswerable prayer for return, who can let the loss move through them in the specific way that genuine mourning moves, and receive from the moving what the grief contains. The Nibeel Elder of Zimbabwe offers a final teaching of this segment, one that brings together everything that has been said about anger and self-directed anger and grief into a single, practical, deeply human image. She says, "Carry your water in a clay pot, not in your hands." This is not a proverb that appears in the written collections. It is a saying from her specific community, specific to the specific experience of the women who have carried water in clay pots across the specific terrain of the Zimbabwean highlands for generations. She explains it simply. Your hands alone cannot carry enough water to sustain you. They can hold a little. They can cup together and hold a few mouthfuls, enough for the immediate moment, not enough for the journey. The clay pot was made for the carrying. It has a specific shape and the specific capacity that the carrying requires, can hold enough for the journey, can be balanced on the head in the specific way that distributes the weight correctly, can be sealed to prevent spillage on the difficult sections of the path. The emotions, the anger and the grief and the self-directed shame, and the various difficult feelings that a human life contains. These are the water, and the question that the Nibeel elder is asking is not whether to carry them. The water must be carried. The emotions must be felt. There is no honest human life that does not contain them. The question is how. In the hands, which cannot hold enough, which spill with every difficult step, which tire quickly and must be replenished constantly, or in the clay pot, the specific, shaped, appropriate vessel that the carrying requires. What is the clay pot for emotions? The elder does not specify. She has learned, in her long life, that the answer is different for different people, that the specific vessel that allows one person to carry their water may not be the vessel that another person needs. For some it is prayer. For some it is a specific ritual of mourning that the community provides, the gathering and the singing and the specific, collective processing a shared loss that the Ndebele tradition, like many African traditions, maintains with great care. For some, it is a conversation with an elder, the specific, trusted, confidential conversation with someone who has carried similar water and who can offer the knowledge of how the carrying is done. For some, it is simply time, the specific, irreplaceable, non-negotiable time that some emotions require before they are ready to be carried in the pot rather than the hands. But the principle is consistent. Find the vessel, the appropriate, shaped, specific vessel for the specific water you are carrying, and carry it that way, not in the hands, not with the constant spillage and the constant exhaustion of a carrying that the hands were not designed for, in the vessel that was made for the purpose, with the specific ease, not the absence of weight, but the specific ease of weight correctly distributed, of someone who has found the right way to carry what they carry. The fire is very low now, the embers glowing in the specific, steady, patient way of embers that have given most of what they have and are giving the last of it slowly, carefully, as if aware that what remains is precious and should not be wasted. The gathering is quieter than it has been, the specific quiet of people who have received something that has reached them genuinely, that has moved past the surface into the deeper layers where the things that actually change a person live. The elders have been speaking about difficult things, about anger that does not sleep and truth that wounds with clarity and grief that contains a gift and the specific clay part of the appropriate vessel. And they have spoken about all of it with the specific quality of people who know these things from the inside, who have carried the water in their hands until their hands could not hold it, who have found the vessel through the specific necessity of someone for whom the alternative was to lose what they were carrying entirely. There is one more segment ahead, the final one, the teachings that the elders have saved for last because they are the ones that require everything that has come before them to be properly received. The teachings about legacy, about the relationship between the individual life and the generations that preceded it and the generations that will follow, about the specific obligation of someone who has received wisdom toward the world that gave them the opportunity to receive it, about what it means to live in a way that the people who come after you will be grateful for. Let the embers warm you in the specific way of embers, not the bright heat of the full fire, but the deep, steady, sustaining warmth of something that has been burning long enough to heat the ground beneath it. That warmth is in you now, and the last teachings are waiting, patient as the night itself, for the moment when you are ready to receive them. Segment 5, the 5th teachings, on legacy and the generations. The embers have settled into their deepest warmth now, the specific, sustaining heat of a fire that has been burning for a long time and that has moved past the drama of its flames into something quieter and more fundamental. The elders feel the shift. They have been speaking about the interior life, about emotion and learning and the difficult internal work of a genuinely examined existence. Now they turn to something larger, to the relationship between the individual life and the vast, continuous human story within which every individual life is embedded, to legacy, to the generations. There's an elder from the Akan tradition of Ghana who has been waiting through all the previous teachings with a specific quality of patience that is different from the patience of the other elders. Not the patience of someone who is waiting for their turn to speak, but the patience of someone who understands that what they have to say can only be received after everything else has been said. That the teaching about legacy requires a foundation of every earlier teaching to support it. He is a man who has outlived many of the people he loved, not as a tragedy, on not only as a tragedy, but as a specific, irreversible reality of a long life. The reality that the elder who has been present at many beginnings has also been present at many endings, and that the accumulation of both has produced a specific understanding of the relationship between individual lives and the larger story that contains them. He begins with a question, not a rhetorical question, a genuine one, offered to the gathering with the expectation of genuine consideration rather than a quick answer. He asks, "When you are gone, what will remain?" The gathering considers. The young people think of things, possessions, buildings, the specific physical object that outlasts the bodies of the people who own them. The middle-aged people think of children, the specific biological continuation of the self that parenting provides, the specific comfort of knowing that something of you will persist in the people who carry your blood. The elders in the gathering smile, not unkindly, not with the condescension of people who know the answer and are amused by those who do not, with the specific warmth of people who remember thinking the same things. The Akan elder offers a proverb, "Onapawue ene onyaini." When a person dies, they grow. He lets a paradox sit in the gathering, the specific productive confusion of a statement that contradicts the obvious, that says the opposite of what common sense would predict, that requires a genuine reconsideration of what dying and growing actually mean. When a person dies, they grow, not the body. The body does a specific thing that bodies do, the returning to the elements from which it was assembled, the dissolution back into the materials of the world that temporarily took the form of a specific human being. The person grows. The elder explains through the specific image that the Akan tradition has used for this teaching for as long as a tradition can remember, the image of the tree. A living tree has a specific size. It takes up a specific amount of space, casts a shadow of specific dimensions, reaches to a specific height, extends its roots to a specific depth. These dimensions are real and they are significant. They represent the tree's actual presence in the world, the specific impact it has on the specific ecosystem it is part of. But the dimensions of the living tree are also limited to the specific space it occupies, the specific shadow it casts, the specific reach of its actual branches and its actual roots. When the tree falls, when it completes its life and returns to the earth, something changes about its dimensions. Its physical dimensions diminish, the wood decays, the roots release their hold. The specific material presence of a tree reduces over time to the specific material it was made of, but its influence grows. The specific insects and organisms that the fallen log supports, the specific fungi and bacteria that break it down and release its nutrients back into the soil, the specific plants that establish themselves in the gap it's falling open in the canopy, now receiving light that the standing tree's shade had prevented from reaching them. All of these are the tree's continuing influence, its presence in the ecosystem persisting, and in some ways expanding through the specific way its end becomes. Other things beginning. Onapawue ene onyaini. When a person dies, they grow. The specific teachings they gave, now available to be applied without the person's physical presence, now carried in the minds and the practices of the people who received them, now growing in the specific, unpredictable, generative way that good teaching grows when it has been genuinely received. The specific relationships they built, now part of the specific web of connection that the people they love maintain with each other. Now the invisible infrastructure communities that continue to function because of the specific social architecture that the person helped to build, the specific character they demonstrated, the specific way of being in the world of the people who knew them observe and absorbed and carry forward, often without knowing they are carrying it, in the specific choices they make, in the specific standards they maintain, in the specific way they treat the people around them. The person who has genuinely lived, who has given real teaching and built real relationships and demonstrated a real character, does not simply stop when the body stops. They grow into all the lives that were touched by theirs, into all the specific ways that being in relationship with them changed the people who were in that relationship, into the specific, continuing, expanding influence of a life that was genuinely invested in something larger than itself. From Ghana, the fire moves to the Yoruba tradition of Nigeria, where the understanding of legacy takes a specific form that is different from the Akan image of the tree, but that arrives at the same essential truth through a different route. The Yoruba elder who speaks next is a woman whose specific role in her community has been the preservation of the oral tradition, the specific keeper of the stories and the proverbs and the genealogies that connect the living to the dead in the specific, continuous way that the Yoruba tradition understands as essential to the functioning of a healthy community. She begins with the concept of Ori, the specific Yoruba understanding of the personal destiny, the individual spiritual essence that each person carries and that is the foundation of their specific life path. But she quickly moves past the individual dimension of Ori to the communal dimension, to the specific understanding in Yoruba thought that the Ori of the individual is not isolated, is not self-contained, is not simply the property of the specific person who carries it. It is connected to the Ori of the ancestors who came before, who shaped the specific conditions into which the person was born, whose decisions and whose sacrifices and whose specific way of navigating the world created the specific opportunities and the specific challenges that the current generation inherits. And to the Ori of the descendants who will come after, who will inherit in turn the specific conditions that the current generation creates, who will be shaped by the decisions and the sacrifices and the specific way of navigating the world that the living are practicing right now, in this specific moment. The Yoruba proverb she offers reflects this understanding. The one who enjoys the shade does not forget the one who planted the tree. She applies it in both directions, looking backward at the specific people whose planting the current generation is enjoying, whose specific work and specific sacrifice and specific choices made possible the specific conditions within which the current generation lives. The grandmother who maintained the oral tradition through conditions that made its maintenance genuinely difficult, whose specific commitment to preservation meant that the stories and the proverbs and the genealogies were available to be passed on rather than being lost in the disruption that surrounded her. The grandfather who built the specific relationship with a neighboring community that made possible the specific trade and the specific cooperation that the current generation benefits from without always knowing that a specific person's specific effort created it. The ancestors, further back, whose specific agricultural knowledge developed a specific understanding of the specific soil and the specific place that made the specific productivity of the current generation's farming possible. The shade is real, and the tree that was planted to provide it was planted by specific people, in specific circumstances, at specific personal costs, often without knowing whether the shade would ever be enjoyed. But the elder applies it forward too, And this is a dimension that has the most immediate practical relevance for the people gathered around the fire tonight. You are planting trees right now, not in the metaphorical sense, not simply in the sense of being alive and therefore inevitably shaping the conditions that those who come after you will inherit, in the specific sense of making specific decisions in specific circumstances that will have specific consequences for specific people who are not yet born or not yet old enough to understand what is being done in their name. The relationship you maintain or allow to deteriorate, the knowledge you transmit or allow to be lost, the standard you uphold or allow to erode, the specific investment of time and effort and genuine care that you make or withhold in the various dimensions of your life that will outlast you. All of it is tree planting. All of it is a specific work of the person who understands that they are not the end of the story, that the story continues after them, that the conditions into which it continues are being shaped right now by the specific choices they are making, and that the shade their descendants enjoy or fail to enjoy is a direct consequence of the trees they planted or failed to plant. The one who enjoys the shade does not forget the one who planted the tree, and the one who is planting does not forget, must not forget, the ones who will one day rest in the shade. The Swana tradition of Botswana and South Africa offers a teaching on legacy that approaches the question from the specific angle of reputation, the specific understanding that what a person leaves behind is not simply the material and the relational legacy of their life, but the specific name they have made, the specific way they are remembered, the specific quality of their presence and the memories of the people who knew them. Lena Lebe Kusetalako Samotho. A bad name is a person's worn-out shoe. The elder who offers this, a man whose specific quiet authority in the gathering has been present from the beginning, visible in the way the other elders listen when he speaks, explains it in the specific way of the Swana tradition, through the image rather than through abstract analysis. A worn-out shoe is not simply uncomfortable. It is a public statement. In a community where people see each other daily, where the condition of a person's possessions is visible and is read as evidence of the condition of their character and their circumstances, a worn-out shoe communicates something, communicates it to everyone who sees it, without the wearer being able to control what it communicates or to whom. It communicates neglect, not necessarily of the shoe itself. The shoe may have been worn out through genuine use, through the specific, legitimate wearing down of something that was used as it was meant to be used. But the person who appears in worn-out shoes has failed to manage the transition from the worn-out shoe to its replacement, has allowed the gap between the shoe's condition and the appropriate standard to become visible, to become public, to become the statement that others read. A bad name works the same way. It is visible. It is public. It communicates something to everyone who encounters a person whose name it has become. Communicates it before the person has spoken a word, before they have demonstrated anything of their current character, before they have had the opportunity to show that they are something different from what the name suggests. And like the worn-out shoe, the bad name is a result of a failure of maintenance, a failure to tend the specific, ongoing, daily work of living in a way that the name reflects, a failure to close the gap between the reputation and the reality before the gap becomes too large to be easily addressed. The elder is not counseling reputation management in the superficial sense, is not advising the careful management of appearances for the sake of social standing. He is making a deeper point about the relationship between how a person lives and what their life leaves behind, about the specific, daily, unglamorous work of maintaining the kind of character that produces a name worth inheriting, a name that the people who come after will be grateful to carry rather than burdened to explain. Because names are inherited, the specific reputation of a family, the specific way that a community thinks about and relates to the descendants of the person whose name they carry, is shaped by the specific character of the person who established the name. The children and the grandchildren of the person whose name is associated with honesty and with generosity and with the specific qualities that the community values. These people carry an advantage that they did not earn individually, but that was given to them by the specific, daily work of the ancestor whose name they bear. And the children and the grandchildren of the person whose name is associated with the opposite qualities carry a corresponding burden. A burden they did not earn individually, but that was placed on them by the specific, daily failures of the ancestor whose name they bear. The worn-out shoe is not only worn on the feet of the person who neglected it. It is worn, eventually, by the people who inherit their name from that person. And the elder has seen, in his long life, both the specific advantage and specific burden, has seen families lifted by the specific reputation of an ancestor and families laboring under the specific weight of a name that was not well maintained. His counsel is simple. Tend the shoe, tend the name, do the specific, daily, unglamorous work of living in a way that the name reflects a character you would want your descendants to inherit, because they will inherit it, whether you intend for them to or not. The Somali elder has been quiet through most of the evening, has been the most distant of the gathered elders, the most contained, the one whose specific quality of interior life has been most completely held within rather than expressed outward. When he finally speaks, the gathering feels the specific weight of a person offering something that has been carried for a long time and that is now ready to be put down. He offers a poem rather than a proverb. Not a long poem, a few lines, in the specific compressed beauty of the Somali oral poetry tradition, one of the most sophisticated and most technically demanding oral poetry traditions in the world. He speaks at first in Somali, the specific sounds of the language carrying their meaning before the translation comes, the specific music of the words doing something that the meaning alone cannot do. And then he translates. The river does not ask the sea for permission to arrive. It has been traveling toward the sea since the moment of its rising. And when it arrives, the sea receives it, not because the river earned the sea's reception, but because the river was always of the sea, was always water that had risen from the sea and that was making its way back through the specific, circuitous, obstacle-filled route of the river's journey, to the place it came from. You are the same. You have been traveling since the moment of your beginning towards something that was always your destination, the specific, vast, unbounded thing that a tradition calls by many names, but that every tradition calls by some name, the specific return of the individual life to the source from which it came. And when you arrive, when the specific river of your life reaches a specific sea of completion, the sea will receive you, not because you earned the reception, but because you were always of the sea. And the river does not ask the sea for permission to arrive. The teachings on legacy are settling into the gathering now, into the specific, receptive quiet of people who have heard something that has reached them at the level where the important things reach, below the surface of understanding into the deeper place where things that genuinely change you live. The elders are not finished. There is one more full teaching ahead, on love, on the specific relationships that give individual lives their warmth and their meaning, and then the final gathering, the last words of the evening, the specific wisdom that the elders say for the moment when the fire is lowest and the night is deepest and the people gathered are most fully present in the specific way that deep tiredness and deep listening together produce. Let your body settle deeper into whatever is holding it. Let the legacy teachings rest in you, the growing of the dead in the shade of the planted tree and the worn shoe of the neglected name, and the river that does not ask the sea for permission. All of it true, all of it yours now, in the specific way that received wisdom becomes yours, not by possession but by incorporation, by the specific process of genuine understanding that makes what was outside you part of what is inside. The fire has one more hour in it, and the elders have one more teaching to give. Segment 6, the 6 teachings on love, relationships, and the bond between people. The night has moved past its middle now, into the specific hours that belong fully to the dark, the hours when the world outside the fire circle has become completely quiet, when the animals that move in the day have settled and the animals that move in the night have found their rhythm, when the specific quality of the air has changed from the warmth of early evening into something cooler and more intimate, something that draws the people around the fire imperceptibly closer to each other and to the heat. The elders feel this drawing closer, and they begin to speak about the thing that drawing closer is an expression of the specific human need for connection, for the bonds that make individual lives bearable and meaningful and genuinely warm, for the specific, complicated, irreplaceable experience of loving and being loved in the full range of ways that love takes form in a human life. The elder who begins this segment is from the Mandinka tradition of the Gambia and Senegal, a woman whose specific quality of presence has been the warmest in the gathering all evening, whose specific way of listening to the other elders has communicated a genuine delight in their wisdom that is itself a form of love, a form of the very thing she is about to speak about. She does not begin with a proverb. She begins with a memory. She remembers, she says, the first time she understood what love actually was. Not the first time she felt it. She had felt it many times before, in the specific, uncomplicated way of children who love without knowing they are loving, whose attachment to the people around them is as natural and as unremarkable as breathing. But the first time she understood it, she was a young woman, newly married, living in her husband's household in the specific way of the Mandinka tradition, the adjustment period that every young bride navigates, the learning of a new household's rhythms and a new family's ways and the specific expectations of a new community that had known her husband all his life and was still forming its understanding of her. It was not an easy time, not because the people around her were unkind. They were not, she is careful to say, they were genuinely welcoming in the specific way of a community that takes its hospitality seriously. But because adjustment is its own difficulty, and the specific difficulty of adjusting to a new life while also trying to be a good wife and a good daughter-in-law and a good community member, all at the same time, all in a context that was not yet fully her own, was genuinely taxing. And her husband saw it, not in the dramatic way of a grand gesture or formal acknowledgement, but in the specific, quiet, daily way of someone who is paying attention, who notices a specific quality of another person's difficulty and responds to it without needing to announce the response. He brought her water one morning, not because it was his role. In the specific division of labor of their household, bringing water was her responsibility, part of the daily work that her role as wife included. He brought it because her hands were full of something else, and he saw that they were full, and without comment or ceremony, he simply picked up the water vessel and brought it to where it needed to be. That was the moment she understood. Not the grand declaration of love, not the specific, formal expressions of commitment that the ceremony of their marriage had included. This, the specific, daily, quietly attentive act of someone who sees what you need before you have asked for it, who responds to your actual situation rather than to their idea of your situation, who demonstrates through the specific small actions of daily life that your well-being is genuinely present in their awareness. The Mandinka proverb she offers from this memory is one that her own grandmother gave her on the morning of her wedding. Love makes love grow. She unpacks it in the specific way that the memory she has just shared have prepared the ground for, not as an abstract observation about the nature of love, but as a practical description of how love actually works in the daily reality of a life shared with another person. Love is not a fixed quantity, not a specific amount that is present at the beginning of a relationship, and that must be carefully managed and conserved so that it does not run out, not a resource that diminishes with use, that must be rationed to last. Love is a living thing, and like all living things, it grows when it is fed and diminishes when it is not. The specific, daily, quietly attentive acts of love, the brought water, the noticed difficulty, the small accommodation of another person's specific need, these are not simply the expression of love that already exists. They are the feeding of it, the specific way that the love that already exists between two people is maintained and deepened and expanded into something larger than what it was at the beginning, not because time alone does this, not because the simple fact of duration produces growth, but because the specific, daily practice of loving attention feeds a living thing of love in a way that any living thing must be fed to grow. And the inverse is equally true. The love that is not fed, the relationship that is not maintained through the specific, daily practice of genuine attention and genuine care, does not simply stay at its current level, waiting patiently for the attention to return. It diminishes in the specific, gradual, often invisible way of a living thing that is not receiving what it needs, not dramatically, not all at once, but incrementally, the specific warmth of the connection cooling degree by degree as the days without genuine attention accumulate. Love makes love grow, and the absence of love makes love diminish. The elder is not offering this as a criticism of any specific person or any specific relationship. She is offering it as a most practical piece of wisdom she has about the specific work of maintaining the bonds that matter most. The work is daily, not the grand gesture, though grand gestures have their place and their value. The daily practice, the specific, ordinary, unglamorous attention of someone who understands that the living thing of love requires feeding every day in the specific way that every living thing requires what it needs every day rather than in occasional large doses are supposed to compensate for the days of neglect between them. From the Gambia fire moves to the Kikuyu tradition of Kenya, where the understanding of love takes a specific form that is less romantic and more communal than the Mandinka elders' teaching, less about the bond between two people and more about the specific web of bond between many people that constitute the community within which individual loves find their context and their support. The Kikuyu elder who speaks next is a man whose specific role in his community has been the mediation of conflict, the specific, difficult, endlessly demanding work of helping people who love each other and who are in genuine conflict with each other to find a path back to each other that their love requires but that their conflict is obscured. He has sat with many couples, many families, many communities in the specific, painful state of people who are genuinely connected to each other and who are simultaneously genuinely hurting each other, whose love is real and whose damage to each other is also real, and who cannot see, in the specific heat of the conflict, the path that leads through the damage back to the love. It is specific. Accumulated wisdom about this specific situation is one of the most practically useful bodies of knowledge in the gathering tonight. He begins with a Kikuyu proverb that has guided his practice across many decades of this work. Jikino jitwarga endetonyega. Joy carries good words. He explains it in the specific, practical way of someone whose understanding of it has been refined through many actual applications in many actual conflict situations. When people are in conflict, when the specific heat of a disagreement or a hurt or a pattern of damage has reached the point where the people involved are more focused on the wound than on the relationship, the natural tendency of communication is to move toward the wound, to say the specific, pointed things that the wound demands to be said, to make visible, in the clearest and sometimes the sharpest possible language, the specific nature of the damage and the specific responsibility for it. This is understandable. The elder does not criticize it. The wound is real, and the impulse to make the reality of it visible is the honest impulse of someone who is genuinely hurt and genuinely needs a hurt to be acknowledged. But the problem with communication that moves only toward the wound is that it tends to deepen the conflict rather than resolve it, tends to produce in the other person the specific defensive responses that genuine criticism generates, the closing down rather than the opening up, the justification rather than the acknowledgement, the counterwound rather than the healing. Joy carries good words. What the elder has learned across his many decades of sitting with people in conflict is that the path through the conflict to the resolution of the underlying love requires almost always runs through joy, through the specific, deliberate recovery of what is genuinely good between the people who are in conflict before the specific, necessary work of addressing the wound is attempted, not as an avoidance of the wound. The wound must be addressed, and the elder is clear about this, is not counseling the pretense that the damage is not real, but as a preparation for addressing it. The couple who have forgotten, in the heat of their conflict, that there is anything genuinely good between them, who are so focused on the specific damage of the recent past that the specific love of the longer past has become temporarily invisible. This couple is not in the right state to address the wound in a way that leads to healing rather than to further damage. The joy must be recovered first. The specific, genuine, honest remembering of what is good between them. Not a performance of good feeling that is not actually felt, but the specific, deliberate recovery of genuine warmth through the specific, practical act of speaking the good things that are true alongside the difficult things that are also true. And in the recovering of the joy, in the specific moment when the conflict's tunnel vision opens enough to include the love that is also present, the communication that addresses the wound becomes possible in a way that it was not possible before, because it is no longer happening between two people who have forgotten why they are in relationship. It is happening between two people who remember, who are in enough genuine contact with what is good between them to have the specific motivation for the difficult work of genuine repair. Joy carries good words, and the good words, carried by the joy, carry the relationship through the wound and back to the love that the wound was threatening but could not destroy. The San Elder from the Kalahari speaks next, and in speaking, she brings to the gathering the specific ancient wisdom of one of the oldest continuous human cultures on Earth, a tradition of understanding the world and the human place in it that stretches back further than any other living tradition. She speaks about a form of love that the other elders have not yet addressed directly, the specific love between a person and the land, the specific bond between a human community and the specific place it inhabits, the relationship that her people call by a word that has no adequate English translation, but that means something like home love, the specific, deep-rooted attachment to a particular place that is as fundamental to her people's understanding of love as any bond between persons. The sand proverb she offers is one of the oldest in her tradition. The land remembers everything. She says it 3 times, once in her language, once in translation, once in the specific slow repetition that signals, in her tradition, that what is being said carries particular weight and deserves particular attention. The land remembers everything. She means this literally, in the specific, practical sense of someone whose people's survival has depended, across thousands of years, on the specific accumulated memory of what the land does and when and where and why. The specific places where water accumulates after rain. The specific plants that indicate the presence of underground water in the dry season. The specific animal paths that are used in specific seasons. The specific signs that indicate the movement of specific herds across specific terrain. All of this is memory, not the individual memory of a single person, but the collective memory of a people, accumulated across generations of careful attention to the specific landscape they inhabit, encoded in the specific knowledge that is transmitted from elder to young in the specific way that her tradition transmits essential knowledge. The land holds this memory, not metaphorically, in the specific, physical sense that the land's features carry the evidence of everything that has happened in them, that a person who knows how to read the land can read its history and its specific contours and its specific vegetation and its specific patterns of wear and growth. But she applies the teaching beyond the practical into the specific emotional and spiritual dimension that her tradition has always understood the relationship with the land to include. The land remembers how it has been treated, the people who have cared for it, who have taken from it only what they needed, who have moved through it with a specific attentiveness of someone who understands that they are guests rather than owners, who have maintained the specific practices of reciprocity and care that their tradition requires. These people have built a relationship with the land that the land carries in its specific, ongoing, living response to their presence. And the people who have not cared for it, who have taken more than they needed, who have moved through it with a specific carelessness of someone who treats a living thing as an inert resource. These people have also built a relationship, a different kind. The land remembers. The San Elder is speaking to something that the other elders' teachings have circled around but not yet named directly. The specific extension of love beyond the human, beyond the bond between persons and families and communities, into the bond between human beings and the living world that sustains them. This love is not sentimental. It is not the romantic love of nature that the modern world sometimes performs without the specific commitment that genuine love requires. It is practical. It is a specific, daily practice of attention and care and reciprocity that a long-term relationship with a living thing requires. The same practice that the Mandinka elder described in the context of the relationship between people applied now to the relationship between people and the land. The land must be fed as love must be fed, attended to as love must be attended to. Given back what has been taken as love requires the giving as well as the receiving. The land remembers everything. And the people who love it well, who maintain the specific daily practice of genuine care for the living world that sustains them, these people are loved back, not in the sentimental sense, in the specific, practical, irreplaceable sense of a land that is healthy enough to sustain the people who depend on it, that gives back in abundance and in reliability what the love and the care of those people have invested in it. The Sotho elder of Lesotho in South Africa brings a teaching on love to its final and most personal expression, the specific, intimate, daily love of the self, the relationship that every person has with their own interior life and that shapes, more than any other relationship, the specific quality of love they are capable of offering to others. She has been the quietest of the elders through the evening, the one whose specific, interior quality of presence has been felt rather than observed, whose contribution to the gathering has been more about how she listens and about what she says. When she finally speaks, the gathering gives her the specific, complete attention that is the gathering's recognition of someone who has been carrying something worth hearing for a long time. She offers the Sotho proverb, Mother ku mother ke betho be bang. A person is a person through other people. The gathering recognizes a saying. It is the same essential teaching that the Zulu elder offered at the very beginning of tonight's gathering, the first proverb of the evening, the teaching that everything since has been building on. The Sotho elder smiles at the recognition. She knows what she is doing. She is bringing the evening full circle, is showing the gathering that the teaching on love arrives at its deepest level, back at the teaching on community that the evening began with, because the relationship between community and love is not incidental, is not a coincidence of the evening structure. It is a specific, essential truth that all the other teachings have been moving toward. Love is not possible in isolation, not the full, genuine, life-sustaining love that the human person requires, not the love that the Mandinka elder described as a living thing that grows when it is fed, not the love that the Kikuyu elder described as capable of carrying good words through conflict back to connection, not the love that the San elder described as a bond between people and the land that sustains them. These loves are not possible alone. They require the specific presence of other people, the specific web of relationship within which individual love finds its context and its nourishment and its specific, ongoing opportunity to practice the daily feeding that keeps it alive. Mother ku mother ke betho be bang. A person is a person through other people. And a person loves through other people, is capable of the full range of human love only within the specific, sustaining, irreplaceable context of genuine community, the community that the evening began by honoring and that the evening's teachings have been, in every dimension, returning to. The teaching on love is a teaching on community. The teaching on community is a teaching on love. They are not two things. They are one thing, seen from two different angles. The specific, fundamental truth of human existence that everything else in the evening's wisdom has been exploring and confirming and deepening from different directions. You are a person through other people. You love through other people. And through other people, you are loved. The gathering is very quiet now. Not the quiet of people who are tired. Though the hour is late and the bodies around the fire have long since released the tensions of the day into the specific comfort of a gathering that has offered genuine warmth in every dimension. The quiet of people who are full, who have received something substantial and who are sitting with the fullness of it in the specific way that genuine nourishment produces. Not the restless seeking of someone who has not been satisfied, but the specific, settled quality of someone who has been given what they needed and who is resting in the having of it. The elders look at each other across the fire. Something passes between them. The specific, wordless communication of people who know each other well and who have done this before, who recognize the specific quality of this moment in the gathering and who understand, without needing to say it, that the time for the final teaching has arrived. The fire has one more hour, one more segment of warmth and light before the embers complete their long, patient giving and the night takes over entirely. And in that final hour, the elders will offer what they have saved for last, the wisdom that requires everything that has come before to be properly received, the teaching that can only land in a person who has been prepared by the full evening's journey to receive it. Let your eyes be as heavy as they want to be. Let your body find the last, deepest level of its comfort. The final teaching is coming, and it is worth staying awake for just a little longer. Segment 7. The final teachings. What the elders save for last. The fire is nearly ember now. Not gone, not extinguished, but reduced to the specific, concentrated, deeply patient glow of something that has given most of what it had and is giving the last of it with particular care of something that understands that what remains is precious. The elders are quiet for a long moment, not the silence of people who have run out of things to say. They have been speaking all evening, and there's always more that could be said, always another proverb, always another story, always another angle on the inexhaustible subject of what it means to be human in this specific, beautiful, difficult world. But the specific silence of people who are choosing what to say last. Because what is said last is what is carried into sleep. What settles deepest. What the mind turns over in the quiet of the night and finds still there in the morning, transformed somehow by the hours of rest into something more integrated, more fully received, more completely part of the person who heard it. The elders understand this, and they choose with care. The oldest elder in the gathering speaks first. She is from the Griqua people of the Northern Cape of South Africa, a community whose specific history of navigating between worlds, of maintaining identity and dignity and cultural continuity under conditions that repeatedly threatened all three, has produced a specific wisdom about resilience that is different from any of the other elders' teachings on the subject. Not the resilience of someone who has never been broken, the resilience of someone who has been broken and who has discovered, in the specific experience of being broken, something about the nature of the self that unbroken people cannot know. She begins with silence, a long silence, longer than any pause in the evening's teaching has been, long enough for the gathering to feel the specific quality of it, to understand that what is coming has been held for a long time and is being released with the specific care of something precious. And then she speaks. Diad is ONS Moda. The earth is our mother. She says it in Afrikaans first, the specific language of her community, the language that carries a specific history of a people who took what was given to them by circumstances they did not choose and made from it something that was genuinely their own. And then in English, the earth is our mother. She does not elaborate immediately. She lets the image work in the gathering. The specific image of the earth as mother, the oldest image in the human repertoire. So old that it predates any specific culture or any specific tradition, present in some form in virtually every human community that has ever existed. The specific recognition that the ground beneath the feet is not simply inert material, but the specific, sustaining, unconditionally available support of something that holds everything without being asked. The earth holds you. she says. Not sometimes, always, not conditionally, without requirement, not in proportion to what you have done to deserve it. Regardless of what you have done, regardless of what has been done to you, regardless of the specific condition of your life at this specific moment. The earth holds you. This is a teaching that she has saved for last because it is a teaching that she has found most necessary in the specific, difficult passages of her own long life. The teaching that she has returned to when the other teachings were not enough, when the wisdom about community and patience and failure and legacy and love was real and true and insufficient for the specific weight of what she was carrying. In those moments, she did not need wisdom. She needed the specific, physical, immediately available comfort of the earth beneath her, the specific act of lying down on the ground, feeling its specific solidity, its specific coolness or warmth depending on the season, its specific, unconditional refusal to let her fall further than it. The earth held her, and in being held by the earth, she found what she needed to continue, not the answer to her difficulty, not the resolution of her pain, not the specific wisdom that would make the hard thing easier, simply the specific, physical, immediately available reminder that she was held, that the ground beneath her was solid, that no matter what was happening above the ground, in her life, in the lives of the people she loved, in the specific, sometimes brutal circumstances of the world she inhabited, the ground itself was steady, was there, was holding. The Greek elder does not turn this into a spiritual abstraction, does not move it into the realm of theology or metaphysics or the specific religious frameworks that different traditions use to describe the relationship between the human being and the ultimate ground of being. She keeps it physical. The earth, your mother, holding you, right now, tonight, in this specific moment. Whatever is happening in your life, whatever weight you are carrying, whatever difficulty is waiting for you on the other side of this night, the ground beneath you is holding you, has been holding you for every moment of your life, will continue to hold you without condition, without requirement, without any demand that you deserve the holding before it is given. Dyad is ONS motor. The earth is our mother, and a mother holds her child, not because the child has earned it, because holding is what mothers do. The Maasai elder of Kenya and Tanzania speaks next, a man whose specific physical presence in the gathering has been one of its most striking features all evening, the specific quality of someone who has spent most of his life outdoors, whose body carries the evidence of a life lived in close relationship with the specific landscape of the East African savanna. He speaks about stars, not in the astronomical sense, not about the specific physics of stellar formation or the specific distances that make starlight the ancient thing it is by the time it reaches human eyes. About the specific relationship between human beings and the stars that has sustained his people across the long centuries of their pastoral life. The specific way that the Maasai understanding of the sky is not simply navigational but relational, not simply practical but deeply personal. He offers a saying that the Maasai elders give to young warriors before their first night alone on savanna, before the specific initiatory experience of spending a night alone in the landscape that will be their responsibility to navigate and protect for the rest of their adult lives. The stars are the eyes of the ancestors. He explains it in the specific way that the Maasai elders' teaching style tends toward, not through analysis but through experience, through the specific sensory invitation to feel what the saying is describing rather than simply to understand it intellectually. He asks the gathering to look up, and the gathering looks up, past the fire, past the immediate circle of its light, into the specific, extraordinary African sky above them. The sky that is as different from the sky above cities as a savanna is different from a parking lot. The specific, unpolluted, unobstructed African sky with its specific density of stars that makes the darkness between them seem almost incidental. Look at them, he says, not at the sky in general, at specific stars. Pick one, hold it with your attention for a moment. Let your eyes rest on a specific point of light and let the rest of the sky go slightly out of focus so that the specific star you have chosen becomes a specific, concentrated point of your attention. And then he asks, who looked at this star before you? Not in the abstract sense, specifically, your grandmother. Did she look at this star? Almost certainly. She had the same sky above her, in the same specific latitude of the same specific continent. And the stars do not move in the time frame of human generations. And the star you are looking at tonight was in approximately the same position in the sky on the specific nights when she was young and when she was sitting around fires of her own and when she looked up at the sky with whatever was in her heart at that specific moment. She looked at this star, and her grandmother looked at it, and her grandmother's grandmother. And the line of women who looked at this star goes back further than any genealogy reaches, back to the specific ancestors who were the first human beings to look up at the sky with a specific quality of awareness that makes the looking more than simply seeing, that makes it the specific, conscious recognition of something beautiful and something vast and something that connects a person looking to every other person who has ever looked. The stars are the eyes of the ancestors, not because the ancestors literally inhabit the stars. The Messiah Elder is not making a specific theological claim about the afterlife, but because looking at the stars is a specific act that connects the living to the dead in the most immediate and most physically available way, the act that every human being who has ever lived has performed, the specific, universal, cross-temporal experience of looking up at the same stars and feeling, for just a moment, the specific, vertiginous awareness of being one point in an enormous, continuous human story. You are not alone under these stars. You have never been alone under these stars. Every person who has ever lived has looked up at them, and in looking up at them has been connected across the vast distances of time, across the specific separations of death and the specific limitations of individual human lives, to every other person who has ever looked up at them. The ancestors are looking at the same stars, through their descendants' eyes. The stars are the eyes of the ancestors, and when you look up, they see what you see, and you are, for that moment, together. The Congo Basin Elder speaks next. From the dense forest traditions of Central Africa, the traditions that have developed their wisdom in the specific context of the forest rather than the savanna or the highland, the specific, enclosed, teeming, ancient ecosystem that is one of the great living systems of the planet. She offers a teaching that is different in character from all the other teachings of the evening. Not a proverb in the formal sense, not a saying that can be extracted from its context and applied generally. It is a practice, something to do rather than something to know. She calls it the morning listening. Every morning, she says, before the day begins, before the specific demands of the day have asserted themselves, before the running of tasks and the management of relationships and the various urgencies that fill the hours of productive day have taken over the consciousness, there is a specific, brief window. The window between sleep and full waking. The window when the mind has not yet reassembled its usual contents, has not yet picked up the worries and plans and the memories and the to-do list that it carries through the waking hours, when there is a specific quality of openness, a specific receptivity that the fully woken mind does not have. In this window, she says, listen, not to anything specific, not for a message or an answer or direction. Simply listen to whatever is audible in that specific moment. The specific sounds of the world outside the sleeping place, the specific ambient presence of whatever is happening in the natural world at the specific hour of this specific morning. In the forest, this listening produces an extraordinary experience. The specific, dense, layered, endlessly complex soundscape of a living ecosystem coming back to life after the night. The birds beginning their specific calls, the insect resuming their specific contributions to the specific symphony of the forest morning, the specific rustling of animals moving through the undergrowth in the specific ways of their specific lives. But the practice is not limited to the forest. It works wherever the person who practices it finds themselves, because there's always something audible in the window between sleep and waking, always some specific sound that the world is making at that specific moment. The practice is simply to receive it before the day takes over, before the mind reassembles its contents and the day begins its demands, before the specific urgency of the waking life closes the window. To lie still for just a few minutes and to listen to whatever the world is doing in that specific moment. To be present in the specific, receptive way of someone who has not yet picked up the weight of their day, who is still light enough to hear what the world is saying in the space before the heaviness returns. She has practiced this every morning for decades, and what it has given her, what the specific, daily, brief practice of morning listening has accumulated into across a lifetime, is a specific, ongoing awareness that the world is larger than her specific concerns, that the specific sounds of the world continuing life are always present beneath and around the specific noise of her individual human experience, that the forest, or the savannah, or the city, or whatever specific world surrounds a listener, is always there, always alive, always making its specific sounds, always available to be listened to by anyone who creates the specific conditions of receptivity that listening requires. She has found this practice more sustaining than any proverb, more immediately available than any wisdom, because it requires no understanding, requires no specific knowledge or specific preparation or specific intellectual framework. It requires only the willingness to be still for a few minutes in the window between sleep and waking, and to listen to whatever the world is saying in that specific moment, which is always something, which is always worth hearing. The final elder to speak tonight is the youngest of the gathering, not young in absolute terms, but the youngest among the elders, the one whose life has the most years still ahead of it, and who therefore occupies a specific position in the gathering that is different from the others. Not yet at the end of the journey, still in the middle of it, which means that what she offers is not the specific wisdom of someone looking back on a completed life, but the specific, provisional, genuinely uncertain wisdom of someone who is still in the process of learning what life is teaching. She is from the Malagasy tradition of Madagascar, an island whose specific position at the meeting point of African and Southeast Asian cultural influences has produced a tradition of wisdom that is genuinely unlike any of the other traditions represented in tonight's gathering, a specific synthesis that reflects the specific, complex, layered history of a people who came from multiple directions and made something genuinely their own from all of it. She does not offer a proverb. She offers a confession. I do not know, she says, what the point of it all is. The gathering is very still. Not because the statement is shocking. The elders here have heard many things across their long lives, and the honest confession of not knowing is not shocking to people who have been paying attention to the limits of human understanding. But because the specific quality of the admission, its directness, its refusal of the specific comfort of a wisdom that pretends to have answered the questions that genuine wisdom knows remain open, is unexpected at this hour, in this gathering, from someone in an elder's position. She continues, I have listened tonight to wisdom that I genuinely believe, wisdom about community and patience and failure and legacy and love that I have tested against my own experience and found to be accurate, to be genuinely useful, to be the kind of thing that actually helps a person navigate the specific difficulties of a human life. And I still do not know what the point of it all is. Why there is something rather than nothing. Why the specific, brief, beautiful, painful experience of a human life is structured the way it is, why it includes the specific losses and the specific joys and the specific, endlessly surprising encounters with other people and with the natural world and with the specific, inexhaustible mystery of existing in a universe that does not explain itself. I do not know. And the Melaguzzi proverb she offers is a specific wisdom that her tradition has developed about exactly this not knowing. NY Fianana dear TSY Fanazavana. Life is not an explanation. She says it once, quietly, and then she is silent for a long moment, letting the specific weight of it settle in the gathering before she continues. Life is not an explanation. It is not a puzzle to be solved, she says, not a mystery that will yield its meaning if the right question is asked or the right wisdom is accumulated or the right practice is maintained. It is an experience, to be lived rather than understood, to be felt rather than explained, to be inhabited fully with all the specific, sometimes overwhelming richness of the full human experience, the joy and the grief and the love and the failure and the patience and the legacy and all the rest of what tonight's elders have been speaking about, rather than managed from the safe distance of someone who is trying to figure it out before committing to it. She has found, in her years of searching for the explanation, that the searching itself was the thing that was keeping her from the experience, that the specific, restless quality of someone who is trying to understand before they are willing to be present was a specific thing that was preventing the presence that the experience required. And she has found, tentatively, provisionally, with a specific humility of someone who knows they are still in the middle of the journey, that the willingness to stop looking for the explanation and to simply be in the experience fully and without reservation is itself the closest thing to an answer that the question has. Life is not an explanation. It is this specific fire, this specific gathering, this specific night, with its specific quality of air and its specific stars overhead and its specific warmth of people who have been speaking together about the things that matter most. This specific moment, which is always the only moment that is actually available, which is always enough. If you are willing to be in it, the gathering is complete. The elders have offered what they came to offer, the full, rich, varied, deeply human wisdom of traditions that have been paying attention to the experience of being alive for longer than any written record reaches, traditions that have distilled that attention into the specific, compressed, generative form of the proverb and the story and the specific practice that can be carried into ordinary life and applied in the specific moments when it is needed. It has been a long evening, and it has been worth every moment of its length. Let the fire go now, not with effort. Simply let your attention release its hold on it. The way attention releases its hold on things when the body has grown heavy enough that holding requires more than is available. Let the embers do what embers do, glow their slow, patient, amber glow, giving their last warmth to the air around them, warming the ground beneath them, and then quietly, without drama, without any announcement of their ending, becoming simply the specific warm darkness of ash that still holds heat long after the light is gone. You have been somewhere real tonight, in the company of people who knew things, who had paid the specific price that knowing requires, who had lived long enough and paid attention carefully enough to have something genuinely worth offering to the people gathered around the fire. And you received it, in the specific way that a body receives warmth, not through effort, not through understanding, but through presence, through the simple willingness to be in the right place and to let what is available enter you. The wisdom of the African elders is in you now, not as a list of things to remember. The proverbs will surface when they are needed in the specific moments of your life that call for what they carry, rising from wherever the genuinely received things live in a person. Simply in you, part of the specific accumulation of what this night has been and what you have been in it. The earth is holding you, has been holding you through every word of this long evening, through every teaching and every story and every quiet moment between them, through the full arc of the fire from its brightness to its embers, is holding you now. Feel that, the specific, solid, unconditional holding of the ground beneath you, the earth that is your mother, that hold without condition, that has never once in your entire life let you fall further than it. The stars are overhead, the same stars that your grandmother looked at, and her grandmother before her, and the long, continuous line of people who looked up at this same sky and felt the same specific, vertiginous awareness of being one small, precious point in an enormous, ongoing human story. They are looking down at you now, through the dark, with a specific, patient light of something that has been burning long enough that the light reaching your eyes left its source before your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother was born. Ancient light, still arriving, still finding you. The elders have gone quiet now, their voices settling into the specific, comfortable silence of people who have given what they came to give and who are resting in the giving of it, who are present in the gathering but no longer speaking, content to let the wisdom do what wisdom does when it has been genuinely received. Work in the quiet, in the hours of sleep, in the specific, invisible, unhurried process by which the things that have genuinely entered a person become part of how they move through the world. You do not need to hold on to any of it. It is already held by the part of you that receives what is genuinely offered and keeps it, the deep, patient, faithful part that has been receiving the genuinely important things all your life and holding them in exactly the way that they need to be held. Without effort, without even knowing, let your body be as heavy as it has become, the full, comfortable, utterly surrendered heaviness of a body that has given up the last of its held tensions and is simply resting, simply being, simply present in the specific warmth of this specific moment. Let your breath find the rhythm it finds when no one is asking anything of it, the long, slow, unforced rhythm of a body that is crossing from one shore to the other, from the waking world into the sleeping one, making the crossing in the specific, unhurried way of someone who is not in a hurry to arrive because the crossing itself is already peaceful. The fire is ash now, warm ash, still holding the memory of its heat, still warming the ground around it in the specific, quiet, patient way of something that has given everything it had and is at rest in the having given it. The gathering is still. The African night is enormous and warm and full of the specific, unhurried sounds of a living world that does not stop when human beings sleep. The specific sounds of the night insects and the distant animals and the wind moving through the specific grasses of the specific landscape. The world continuing its specific, beautiful, indifferent, magnificent life around the sleeping forms of the people who have gathered here tonight. Around you, the world is alive around you, and you are part of it. One small, warm, breathing, held part of something so much larger than any explanation could contain. Life is not an explanation. It is this. Exactly this. Rest now. You are held. Good night.